Hey guys, it's time for Truth Talk. Insightful topics that spark real conversation. Thank you for joining. Let's get this started.
Welcome, Representative David Lowe. He is my guest today. And we are in the middle of a campaign trail, right? And so I wanted to sit down, take some time to just have just a conversation with you of where you're at, I know that you've already served in office and you're up for reelection. And so just to kind of like get to know you, I know that you've done a lot of forums, and when I ran for office, being in the forum, it was like 30 seconds, minute, 2 minutes. And so you're supposed to get to know a candidate in that short time. I mean, they're great, but I just feel like there's more that people need to know about people that actually are going out and serving and just taking their time away from their families, things like that, and really just getting out there because of a passion that they have. And so when I looked you up, you're a combat veteran
Yes, ma'am.
and Army serviceman with multiple overseas deployments.
Yes, ma'am.
So thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And now you are a representative as well. You have you have a wife and kids, and that also, I mean, that has been, I'm not going to say challenging for families, but it can be, right?
Absolutely.
Because they're not around their dad and things like that. So what I wanted to start out with is just to kind of talk about who is David Lowe, and then we'll get into some of the things, some of the questions that I have that I've been asked to ask. So who is David Lowe?
Hi. So, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I think information is powerful, and sometimes during campaigns, we only see the little tidbits here or there.
Yeah.
And so, getting to know a candidate is important. So, who is David Lowe? So, I was born and raised in Dallas, Texas. I struggled in school with ADHD and dyslexia. I wasn't ready to go to college, so I joined the military. Absolutely loved the military. Wanted to do 20 years, but that wasn't exactly possible. I was medically discharged for a variety of different things and immediately got involved in local politics. You know, I got out in 2015. I was starting to get pumped up about President Trump, future President Trump. And so I volunteered at the Dallas County Republican Party while I went to college. And I earned a Volunteer of the Year there. And then I graduated the police academy, graduated college, and worked in both an adult and juvenile facility, correctional facility. And then I was asked to become the regional director for the Republican Party of Texas, and I did that for a little while. And then my opponent that I finally defeated before becoming a state representative, she would never call me back. And I tried to reach out to her and address my concerns. And so I decided, you know what, I'm just going to run. And, it took me 2 times to run. And in 2024, I was the least likely primary challenger to win. And even though it took 2 election cycles, we won, and I believe I delivered on my promises. I do have a wife and 2 kids. They're young, and it is stressful on the family. But I believe we are fighting for freedom and fighting for the future of Texas.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's just so much going on. And let me go back to when you were at the juvenile detention center. I was reading about that. There isn't a whole lot of mental health help.
Yes.
And so tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I'm going to tell you one story. We had, kids come in and they go out. It's like a revolving door for many of them. Some of them have been in there 8, 10 times. Some of them have been in there just a couple of times or never been in there. But there was an autistic boy, sweet boy. He pushed his teacher, and his teacher and the administrators did not know what to do with him. So the police came. They took him home. The parents didn't want him anymore because he was too destructive and so forth at home. So they brought him to our facility because he didn't have Medicare or Medicaid. They didn't have the money to put him in a treatment facility. So he sat in a pod with 12 other kids that were actual turds, and they teased him. So I made him sit by my desk to protect him and make sure that nobody else messes with him. And I told myself, if there is ever a time in the future where I can help kids like him, then I will. And one of the budget rider items I offered last legislative session was a juvenile adolescent mental health facility in Fort Worth. I think that I'm on the corrections committee in the Texas legislature, corrections committee. And I think while it's important that we invest money in adult mental health, we are not doing nearly enough to invest money and resources into juvenile mental health. Think about it. The adults that are in prison, right? A lot of them are fixed in their ways. They're not going to change. It's a revolving door. You know that. It's very expensive. But if we invest more in our juveniles, I believe that initially we can actually save a lot more money on the back end if we start taking juvenile corrections more seriously.
Yeah, I really believe that because kids are going through so much now, so many challenges, and unfortunately, we see a lot of things happening around the country that it is juveniles and they just don't have the help. And it's kind of hard, especially like in the schools, because they can only do so much. But there is an epidemic out there, and they do need that. So I really hope that you could do something about that going forward. But I wanted to turn to what your views are. I mean, I know since Trump has come in, he's used a hard hammer when it comes to the border. And now, of course, with the fall of what's happened with Maduro, and being that Venezuela is there's a lot of drugs coming in. So what are your beliefs that what else do we need to do for the border? Not only because Texas gets the blunt of it, right? So what is it that we need to help protect our our finances and resources and really crime and those kind of things. So what are your thoughts on that?
So first of all, I have called for the Texas Border Protection Force. I believe that the Border Patrol does as good of a job as they are capable now that they have President Trump as their leader. However, we will not always have a President Trump. Therefore, we need to plan ahead. So I would like to create our own border force here in the state of Texas. And I have long called for the border force, if ever created, to do what is best to protect the invasion, stop the invasion, and protect Texans regardless of what the federal government says. The federal government has shown decade over decade they don't actually take this seriously. So to be honest with you, I even said this on TV on some interview, the federal government can kick rocks for all I care. We have to protect Texas. So that, and I also want to point out that we have to get every single illegal immigrant out of this country. When I worked in a jail, I was a pot officer with 72 inmates. And, sometimes I would look up the different inmates and see what they're in there for. I can't tell you how many of those that were there for ICE hold were in there for child molestation. The majority of the inmates in my pod that were on ICE holds were there for diddling kids. And so we've got to make sure that it's not just drugs, it's not just violent crime, There are so many different things that are costing Texans lives. And we have to remove everyone. And I actually filed a bill to deter, and this is controversial, but it is to deter enrolling illegal immigrant children into Texas public schools. Property taxes are rising significantly year after year. Yes, they've had some relief, and praise God for that. But Texans should not be paying for people who are not allowed to be here. And think about it. The schools, we keep saying the schools are in decline. Number one, we don't have any idea how much money we're spending on illegal immigrants in our public schools. It's an astronomical amount, but we don't exactly know. And secondly, schools have to teach to the lowest performer. And so if you remove the illegals from our public schools, I firmly believe that you will see a much more educated population, and you will see the scores of individual schools rise significantly.
Yeah, and to your point, people would come back and say, but they're kids. We got to help them out. We got to do this. And you're right. It's like, because they don't know the language. You got to start from ground zero. And if they're in a classroom setting and you got 20 that can understand it and you got 5 that can't, then you're right. It's like the teacher has to hold back and, kind of go at that pace. So I can understand that part.
Well, I will just say this, and it doesn't matter if it's illegal immigration or something else. As an elected official, I need to look at things logically and not emotionally. Yes, God bless those kids. I feel sorry for them being put in an impossible situation. But at the end of the day, I did not get elected to protect illegals. I got elected to protect and defend Texans.
Absolutely. Okay, well, I'm going to dovetail over to THC. That's been spoken about so much. I mean, we even heard something from President Trump that we might make some of this illegal, and then there's controversy. Well, THC, and can get laced or whatever. So tell me your stance and why about THC.
So I don't know if you know this, but I actually gave a speech on the House floor during the THC fight. And I was highly ridiculed. Number one, it's in the Republican Party of Texas platform to not support the legalization of marijuana, and allowing THC is an incremental step to making that happen. And I will never support that. Secondly, I've learned a lot more about THC. Did you know THC stores in the fatty cells of your body? Okay. If it's alcohol, you can breathe it out, pee it out, sleep it off, puke it up. But THC stores in the fatty cells. What's the biggest fatty cell in your body? Your brain. You could just walk down Congress Avenue and you can see THC is wrecking the lives of people. And to put it frank, I'm not going to support it. It is a poison. Not only that, countries that absolutely hate us are importing and distributing this THC. I have never met somebody who does THC regularly that is considered a high performer. Now, some people may say, hey, alcohol's much worse. How do we actually know that? Right? Yes, there are DWIs and so forth, but there are a lot of people that have a lot of issues. There's THC psychosis. There's a whole host of health-related issues related to THC, but nobody wants to talk about that. And this is going to be a fight for the future. And I am not a libertarian. I am a conservative. There is a difference here. And so I will not support the legalization of THC.
And you see, and like you said, you can go downtown in the Capitol and you see the damage that is happening, and you see what it's done even to kids. I mean, they can't think straight.
Yes.
They think it's just, oh, I'm just going to get high, and it's
Yes.
not a bit. It's not any worse than. I mean, they look at like heroin or something being the worst, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you look at when they're inhaling, eating, whatever, this stuff, it's like they are not in their right mind. And to your point, it stores itself in that fatty cell area. And so, yeah, I'm really glad that you pointed that out.
So I do want to point out, look, I love me some Dr. Pepper. I love Skittles. I love sugar.
Mm-hmm.
I had some parents who had children that were victims of THC. And they brought all these yummy looking gummies and all sorts of stuff and put it on my desk in my office at the Capitol. And honestly, I knew it was poison right in front of me, but it's like beautiful colors. It looks so yummy. It's like, give it to me. A single gummy can be like 5 shots of alcohol. And you're sitting there in class and you're just chomping away at the whole bag. Like there are hidden dangers of THC, and they are marketing it not for adults. They are marketing it for a younger generation to entice them. And again, if they weren't so deceptive in their marketing, I don't believe we would have brought the conversation this far.
Right. Well, you're going to continue that fight.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's good. All right, let's talk about casinos. Okay, there's been such a push, so much money that has been thrown, and to take some money and I mean, we're talking millions and millions and millions, because Texas is, well, there's a lot of money coming into Texas, and so now you keep on seeing where they want to bring casinos in. Tell me where you stand and why.
All right, let's just clarify something here. Let's just say, for example, you supported casinos. Mm-hmm. What Sands Casino wants to do is have a monopoly. They don't want competition. They want to have the majority of licenses in Texas. I believe in competition. Mm-hmm. That aside, if you look at the communities where the scratch-off tickets for Texas Lotto are the largest, they are in more poor areas for instant gratification. You know, they are selling them as destination resorts. Sounds fancy. Mm-hmm. I almost took the bait, right? Because they have these awesome brochures and everything else. But the people that keep the lights on in these casinos are not the people that can afford to play. And it is a taxation on the poor. I also don't like the government competing with private enterprise. So I want to get rid of the Texas Lotto also. Plus, it's not really doing what it was supposed to do, which is fund education. Mm-hmm. However, if we are not going to have casinos, which I don't want casinos, you know, my thought might change in the future, but as of right now, I am not concerned about needing casinos. But we have got to get rid of the Texas Lotto.
Yeah, that's something I in another interview, that's something that I was kind of blown away with, that the Texas lottery, like you said, it was supposed to pay for education, right? But it might pay 2 or 3 days out of the year for something like that. I'm like, well, where does the rest of the money go? I mean, what happens with that extra money? And I think casinos is the same way, because they could build something here, right? Mm-hmm. But who is going to flip the bill for the streets because of the added traffic? Who's going to get the money from the proceeds? Who's going to benefit the most out of that? And probably, again, small businesses are the ones going to suffer the most.
So let's just say a big casino destination resort comes into Texas. Why is it fair that that big casino has, all this gambling available, but yet the corner store can't have slot machines, right? Because I believe you are going to open the door to other people saying, hey, that's not fair. You're picking and choosing who has what. However, that aside, I do believe the Texas legislature has failed repeatedly over the last decade or two by picking winners and losers. And that is not the proper role of government.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. All right, let's talk about property tax relief. That has been on everybody's mind. And property tax relief, one of the things that I continue to tell people is that, yeah, it's great that we got the $140,000 that goes to our homestead. That's great. But really, it's like peeling the onion back because your appraisal still go up.
Yes, ma'am.
So, and I know there was, and I don't know where it's at, but I know that before there was a law. I think you could appraise every 3 years, and I think something went through where they knocked that back down. I may not be correct in that, where appraisals can happen, and every year
were able to pick and choose their appraisal process.
Is it still that they can do it every 3 years, or what's?
I'll have to go back and reference the language. However, I actually offered an amendment on the House floor that would freeze all appraisals across the state for 3 years. If we're not going to provide proper and adequate property tax relief, let's go ahead and freeze the appraisals for 3 years to at least provide families with some financial stability. And then just reduce the yearly cap to provide, some increase in funding, but stop raping the homeowners.
Yeah, and you see that the schools, I believe that the bunch of school boards, they went up like, no, we don't want this, because they depend on that, right?
Yes.
So on the property taxes. And so what would be a suggestion to turn that around where homeowners can actually benefit from property taxes while the schools still get funded properly?
So that's a very complex question. Let me just address a couple of things. First, we had a $26 billion surplus.
Yeah.
And we gave, I don't know, $6 or $7 billion in property tax relief. We consistently are taking the taxpayers' money and wasting it. That money was stolen from the taxpayers because it was overtaxed and it should have been returned. And that's why I voted against the budget. Also, let's talk about bonds real quick, because you're mentioning school districts. If you go to the Texas Bond Review Board, you will see that the state of Texas, including interest, owes over $500 billion in bond debt. The Texas Bond Review Board has said, even in their own report, 68% of that local bond debt is paid for by property taxes. So when you pass these when you pass these bonds on the ballot, it says this is, they advertise it. It is not a tax increase. It is not a tax rate increase, but it does increase the debt per citizen. And we are drowning in spending, right? We need new roads. We need new schools. We need new technology. We need a lot of new things, but we don't need Taj Mahals. And we've got to be way more selective. This amount of spending that we are doing in the state of Texas is not sustainable. And, just in a few years, this Texas state budget has gone up over 46%.
Wow.
And so people want to know where the property tax, why what do we do about property taxes? Well, we got to stop local spending, and we got to stop state spending. You know, I am a conservative, and my goal is to conserve. Force government to do more with less.
That's right. That's right. And a lot of people don't understand when these bonds happen that it's you can only spend it like for this one thing. It doesn't take into account like what energy is going to be used or
Yes, ma'am.
what extra help needs to clean the plate. None of that.
Let's just pick a football state. Or no, you know what? Let's talk about indoor practice facilities.
Okay.
The elected officials in my district will know exactly what I'm talking about. So a $50 million indoor practice facility, a capital improvement bond, you know, the bond is created and, you know, they say it's $50 million. What about the lights, the security, the maintenance, and all of that? That comes out of the M&O, the Maintenance and Operation Fund.
That's right.
You know what? I want more teachers to make $100,000 a year. So if we have to stop building so many facilities and having more of that money maintaining those facilities and putting that money into the pockets of teachers, that's what I prefer.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, for example, I did a report in Fort Worth ISD. Over 300 people in Fort Worth ISD that are in admin make over $100,000 a year.
Admin. I didn't realize that. Wow.
Over 300 make over $100,000 a year.
Wow.
So we are not being innovative in how we can cut expenses, right? At the end of the day, you know, only 30% of the constituents have kids in school, but 100% of the constituents are paying into property taxes.
That's right.
And so we have to keep that in mind. What is the purpose of school? Provide public education. Yes, I want kids to have extracurricular activities, but I don't want it to be to the point where John and Sue, who are 70 years old, have to sell their home because they cannot afford any more taxes, and putting them at a disadvantage because this group over here wants to increase their non-direct education costs. So when I was in the military, stationed at Fort Hood, I had bought my first home. You know, I was a first-time home buyer. I was excited, and I had things going on in my life, and the property taxes kept creeping up. Well, I ended up having to rent out my first home. And then I started driving for Uber. And I remember getting off of work at 5 or 6 p.m., going and taking a 3-hour nap, and driving to Uber or for Uber till probably 5 o'clock in the morning. And then I sleep in my car, ready for PT the next morning. And I understand firsthand how property taxes and life expenses in general can kick you when you're already feeling down. And so it really pisses me off when the government and certain elected officials say, oh, it's just 50 cents or it's just $1 per 100,000. There are families that already are on the struggle bus and you are squeezing them that much more. And remember, if there's will, there's a way. If there's a will to cut property taxes, then there is a way to do it.
Yeah. It was pretty disappointing when the session started and then all of these long weekends kept taking place. What I'm hoping is that, you know, in the next legislative session that actually the people would go to work and do what they're supposed to be doing. So let's say that you get reelected. I mean, what is it that you want to see change?
Full transparency first. I voted against every one of those extended weekends. And during freshman orientation, sometimes you get to pick your desk. And I picked mine right in front of the speaker in the parliamentarian desk because I wanted them to hear me say record vote and request record votes. So I put people on record more than anybody else in the Texas House about how they voted. So we need far fewer voice votes and more on the record votes. And yes, those extended weekends were not good. They were not productive. However, I just want to be clear that just because we are not in the chamber does not mean we're not working. Mm-hmm. There were times where we had an extended weekend, but yet everybody was still in their offices talking to constituents and so forth. So and me as an activist didn't know that. But now me as a legislator, I'm not giving an excuse for the extended weekends. Mm-hmm. What I am saying, there are times when there is work being done, but it looks like that there isn't work being done because we are on break. I absolutely will continue to vote against those. I believe that we need a constitutional amendment to require work in committees to start within the first week.
Yeah, I agree with that.
The speaker knows who, generally they know who is going to be the speaker before the speaker is actually elected. Therefore, and they already know who all the members are, so they should already have the committee assignments set up. There's a lot of wheeling and dealing at the last minute that delays the process, and that's unacceptable because we only have 140 days. So, you know what's crazy to me? There are a lot of people in the Texas House of Representatives that are high performers, successful businessmen, successful lawyers, etc. As soon as they get into the chamber, they become the speaker's puppy dog. They do whatever he says. It's like this alpha male suddenly becomes a beta because the speaker told them to bark or jump. And that's exactly what they do. We need representatives to not represent the speaker, but rather represent their constituents. And I will continue to do that. As you know, I took some very tough votes where it was almost just me by myself, me and maybe one or two other people. And I don't work for the speaker. So what you will see is me continuing to work for House District 91 because that is who I work for. I don't work for the speaker or the chairman of any particular committee.
So when your constituents get a hold of you, I mean, you will respond and what is it that you need? Because it's true, there has been many that have gotten into office and all of a sudden they forget about the constituents and then they kind of do their own thing. So is that something that your office has been doing to make sure that you're in touch with your constituents?
Yes, ma'am. You know, we have a great constituent director at the Texas Capitol, Wyatt, and I have an amazing chief of staff, Rosalie. However, I put my personal cell phone number on everything, 817-253-1214. If they are in my district or not, and they reach out to me, generally, if there's no curse words, I respond. But yes, you know, elected officials oftentimes forget about their constituents once they hold a title. I want them to reach out to me directly if they feel comfortable because I work for them.
That's great. Okay, now it's my understanding that you were able to get a bill, I think a military bill, out to the Senate. Can you talk about that?
Well, it was about expanding benefits for military-dependent children. Oh. You know, I was in the military, and I have seen the rough transitions of having a parent constantly being stationed elsewhere. And I just believe that we cannot continue to neglect military children independence. And so that is something I'm going to explore again next session. I was hoping to get it across the governor's desk, but, you know, I learned a lot about the process They actually call me Vote No Lowe because I vote no to almost more than 140 8 other members when it comes to government spending. So sometimes they like to kill my bills just to send a message to me. But at the end of the day, I want to express this to you and to the viewers that we are not there to just pass good bills. Oftentimes, it's more important to kill bad ones.
Yeah, totally agree. And the last question I want to ask you is that, the veterans, there's mental health. We talked about kids and stuff, but there's mental health when it comes to veterans. And I see more and more that they need help, like especially if they've been in combat where they need to like detransition. And sometimes it's really hard. I, for one, I mean, my grandson was in the military, and he took his own life this past year. And I sometimes wonder that going into the military, you got to get them ready. You got to get their mind ready, their body ready, in the event of war. And then once they get out of that, it's like, you got to get them ready to have normal life, but some of them can't really make that transition. Is there anything that you've thought about that, hey, you know what, we got to really put the focus on our vets in that area?
Yes. So, we offer Texas veteran benefits here in the state of Texas. And one thing I would like to see, it is a tough transition going from military life to civilian life. And I would love to see a facility or a transition facility where you are now a civilian, but if you were a resident of the state of Texas, that you could go to this and they could help you with additional resources and getting your life set up.
Yeah.
I struggled with PTSD myself. I'm actually considered a disabled veteran because of PTSD, and it is definitely a struggle.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I was saying, because you've had multiple tours, and the military definitely sees things that we don't when they're out protecting our country.
Yeah.
So I just wondered about that. You being in the military, that if there's going to be more to be done for our veterans.
So it was actually election day in 2010, and I was a new team leader, and the lieutenant flew down to where we were at because we were going to patrol the roads that covered the polling sites. And at the last minute, the lieutenant had me drive him in the second truck. And I usually drove the third truck, or was in the third truck. And I put the vehicle in the wrong gear. And September 18, 2010. And we got back on the road, but an RPG went through the window of the third truck. And I blamed myself for getting this other soldier killed. Right or wrong, that's what I did. And when I got out of the military, I was constantly seeking that adrenaline rush. And, as you seek it, you keep pushing further and further and further and further. And then one day you look up and you're like, what the hell am I doing? Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of hard to explain, but it's like, I could see why inmates, I'm on the corrections committee. I can see how an inmate who's been locked up for 20 years, all of a sudden they're out, and you want them to act like a good neighbor when they have had to sleep with their boots on almost every night.
Right.
So you're basically putting them in an impossible situation. Mm-hmm. And so I don't have the right answer, but we have to do better because, we will continue to have conflicts We will continue to have
Right.
troops in combat, and this problem will continue. I don't know a single I know 7 people that have taken their lives that I served with, and I don't know a single person who doesn't know somebody who took their life. So this is an epidemic, and Texas military veterans need to be taken care of.
I totally agree. Well, okay, so as our closing, what do you want to say to your constituents now that election day is going to be? I mean, we're in an election season now. What would you like to tell them?
I would like to tell them that it's very cliche when candidates say promises made, promises kept. But for 4 years when I campaigned, I had a set number of rules that I was absolutely going to follow, and I followed them to the T. And I am constantly reminded that I am a representative and no longer an activist. Well, my job, I feel like my position on the team is to move the Overton window to the right. If we do not keep pushing legislation to the right, the left will take over. And very few people, I feel like, get in this position and are willing to go against almost everybody to stand up for their constituents. From day one, I saw how people could get addicted to this position. People kissing your butt, offering you money, gifts, etc. And I rejected all of it. Funny thing I want them to know is during freshman orientation, they said, oh, you'll never have to buy another lunch or dinner while you're in the Texas legislature. Lobbyists will take care of you. And they brought me 3 fast foods, and then they stopped coming by my office. And that's because I work for you, not for them, not for the speaker, not for any other elected official. I work for House District 91, and I am a real Republican.
Thank you so much. I really am. I'm thankful that you were able to come by, and that I just wanted to give you a voice and other candidates a voice of who they are and what they stand for, and just to have this unfiltered conversation of what you want, what your vision is. And thank you as well as really opening yourself up to the PTSD. And there's many people that wouldn't be brave enough to do that. So I really appreciate that. And so I want to thank you for coming. I wish you the best of luck on this next election cycle. And folks, I hope that you guys really listen to David here and what he is about, and what you see is what you get. So thank you again, David, for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. And I would just like to tell everybody, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please text me at 817-253-1214 because I work for you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hit the subscribe button to not miss any episodes of Truth Talk. Until next time, thanks for watching.